We're interviewing Robert C. Davis, lifelong resident of East Palestine. He's 95 years old and was born in 1919. And we're doing a lot of this historical questions because Bob's lived this stuff. And what better place to go besides Bob? Bob, about the fairgrounds. What else you got about the fairgrounds?
Well, as you go up into the park,
Okay.
on the right-hand side, this was before the swimming pool was built.
Okay.
There used to, the medicine man used to come to town.
Medicine man.
The medicine man,
What'd he do?
well, he sold medicine.
Probably a bunch of Tylenol pills.
Could have been. But anyhow, they put on a show over there, and it really attracted a lot of people. And they had, there was a couple of, I think there were actually Indians dressed in Indian garb, and there was a girl singer, and they put on a show up there, and then they sold this medicine. I think it was, I can't even remember what they called it, but they always called it the medicine man coming to town for a show. And that was a big attraction.
I found I found a clip out of a newspaper. I can't remember the date on it. It was like, 1910, 1918, 24, somewhere around there. It stated that 10,000 people attended, I don't know if that'd be, I don't know if I want to say it would have been a horse racing day or a circus. There's 10,000 people. Can you imagine 10,000 people up there? Because I can't. That's a lot of people.
Well,
Of course, probably a lot of them's little kids.
I don't know exactly what the population was when I was a kid, but this town always had over 5,000 people to qualify to be a city, until a lot of the old people passed on. There was nobody coming in because there was not much industry here.
Right. I have the population from 1920 up to 1970. That was our best 50 years ever. Since 70 or maybe it's 1990, and then it started going downhill. But I think in 1920 there was about 5,800 people in town. Now we're down to
What
like
year?
1920.
Yeah.
About 5,700 people.
Well, you see, that was after the First World War, and everything was humming, just like after World War II. You know, now there were some 1942 automobiles made then, but 43, 44, 45, everything that was being produced was for the war effort. And I don't care what business you were in after World War II, you could sell it.
There were so many jobs in town, you could probably quit on South Market Street, walk up to North Market Street in the same day and have a job,
Oh,
couldn't
sure, yeah, yeah.
That just amazes me.
Well, that's the way it was after World War II.
And now we got to drive out of town.
Well,
I don't want to drive out of town. I want to work right in town.
remember I told you, I worked at the Crucible
Yeah.
right after I got out of high school. I was there for a year and a half, and I knew there had to be something better. Next day, I went down to, I lived down on 51, and the people that lived next door to us, he and his father both worked on the railroad. And I was telling Leo about that lousy job down at the Crucible, and he says, "Why don't you come down?" He says, "You put your application in the morning, you start in the afternoon." And that's what I did.
So fast to get a job, ain't it?
Yeah.
And these circuses that came to town, there's a rumor, a story, or it's probably true. Did an elephant die that ate some?
Not that I know
There was an elephant that died at one of these circuses
It was in the 60s.
in the 60s.
of. In the 60s?
Yeah, you were still here in the 60s, weren't you?
Grimm's.
They had to have Grimm's crane service come down, transport, pick this elephant up,
In the 60s?
and in the 60s.
Yes, it's true.
Ate some stale, molded hay or something.
I have
No,
no idea.
you never heard that story?
Nope.
About some flying saucers. Did you ever hear anything about
Nope.
flying? No.
Nope. Nope.
I guess we had some policemen on the force, was it in the 50s? 51, somewhere around there, that seen some, chase some UFOs across the county in the PA, and they got
Oh,
ridiculed.
I've heard of flying
They got-
saucers.
they
Yes,
got
I've heard
ridic-
of that, but
They got ridiculed by people that didn't believe in
Yeah.
it, and I guess somebody, it was a police officer in town, I don't have the name right offhand, ended up moving clear to Seattle just to get away from everybody.
yeah.
I just want to know if you heard that story. Let's see here. The high school, when they ran track, didn't they run track up here at the park at one time?
They still do. Even today.
Well, for
Cross
the high
country.
school sports.
Cross country.
But, well, yeah, cross country. I'm talking about like 100-meter dashes, 220.
Up at the high school?
Now, before that, high school was even there, because that didn't become a school until 1936, 37.
Oh, you're talking about the high school is there now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they had their high school sports over here.
Our class was the first one to go over there in 1937.
Okay. But before they built that school, the present high school, didn't they run their track meets over here at the park?
Well, they had to because there wasn't anything up there for that.
Right, they even had the javelin throw.
They
and-
had football. They had a football field up there.
over here at the park.
No, up at
Well, that field wasn't always up there now. That field wasn't always up there, was it? Was it up there when you was a small kid?
well, yeah. I remember the first coach that I remember up there was Van Heining.
So in 1929, that field was up there?
Yes. Yeah.
It didn't have a fence around it, did it?
No. It was just an open field.
But at one time, did they ever run track over here at the park?
Oh, they could have. You see, back in those days.
I've seen some guys lined up getting ready to run a 100-meter dash in some pictures.
When I was growing up, I had all kinds of odd jobs. I did not have time for any activities in the school.
So you really didn't play any organized
I
sports,
didn't
just
play.
with your buddies over at the East North Avenue field, right?
Yes, us kids had little ball fields that we played in, but when it come to school activities,
Yeah.
I had too much work to do.
So as soon as school was out, your brain's already thinking,
did.
I got work to do.
I didn't have time for that.
Right, okay.
And I always had money in my pocket. Whether it was a dime, a quarter, or a half a buck.
Was you a comic book guy? Did you buy comic books?
Huh?
Did you buy comic books?
No, I didn't.
You went a comic, Superman, and
No.
you went into that?
No.
Didn't we have a semi-pro football team called the Red Devils? Played up there in Jimtown.
No, they didn't
Before
play
my
in
time.
Jimtown. They played at the high school. It's in the 70s.
70s. Someone wanted me to ask you, did you ever hear of a leather helmet that was supposed to be from one of the pro football teams in the Canton Hall of Fame? One of our, I guess we had a pro foot, besides the Red Devils. There was supposed to be a leather helmet over in a football hall. When I go over there this year, I'm going to look it up. Did you ever hear that?
The only person that I know, and I think he played for the Cleveland Browns,
Fred Hoagland.
Fred Hoagland?
who?
Fred Hoagland?
Fred Hoagland, yeah.
Was he a pretty good, do you know him?
Yeah.
Pretty good
Yeah, he
athlete?
used to live up on West North Avenue.
What-
His sister was married to my next door neighbor.
Oh, okay. How about Tony Conkle?
Tony Conkle was in. He was a good athlete. He was there at the same time my brother Cliff was there, and Tommy.
Meek.
I want to say Quiller. Tom
Meek.
Meek.
Tom Meek.
He was a brain surgeon. He's down in Texas somewhere. But him and Cliff and Tony Conkle and a bunch of other guys were good athletes on the team up at high school.
Was Tony Conkle the fastest guy you ever seen run? Because he's got some school records that are still up there
Yeah.
that we can't beat.
Well, that could be. He was a pretty good athlete.
What was his name? He was a long jumper.
Well, my brother Bill was a long jumper. He was into all sports up there.
Tell me that story again. You and your brother, Bill,
Yeah.
because he was all in about making money and learning how to make money. Tell me that story again about this magazine that you guys used to go door to door.
Yeah.
Tell me that story because we didn't get that on tape
Yeah.
last time.
Well, when we lived on East Clark Street, Tommy Quilter had the distribution of the magazine called the Pictorial Review, a magazine similar to Ladies' Home Journal,
Okay.
although it had a lot more pictures of interest in it than the
Okay.
Ladies' Home Journal. And he hired Bill to go out and sell magazines. The magazine cost 10 cents. And then Bill hired me. I think I was maybe 9 or 10 at the time. And we both had, we'd take 25 magazines.
Right.
He'd take 25 and I'd take 25 and he'd take one side of the street, I'd take the other side. And when we got them sold, we were done for that evening. And I suppose maybe at the end of the month we might have sold maybe 150 or 200 magazines. We bummed a ride down to Darlington, Galilee, Enon, and Columbiana.
How much did you sell these magazines for?
10 cents.
10 cents. How much did you get?
I got a penny for every magazine, and my brother got 2 cents, and he got all the brownie points.
Well, that ain't fair.
Huh?
Well, that ain't fair.
Well, I know, but
Say, look, I sold the same magazine you did. I get 2 cents too.
well, back in those days, we didn't have a union.
So he kind of was the boss and the whole deal.
Hey,
You weren't
at
complaining.
at the end of the month, I was glad to get that 35 or 40, 50 cents, whatever it was.
What'd you do with it? Buy candy?
No. My dad told me, he says, And he told Brother Bill, he said, now you guys are making money. He says, for every dollar you make, you bring it home, and he had little banks in his desk. And he had a bank, he had 4 banks, one for Bill, one for Ruth, Dawn, and I. Half of what we made goes in the bank. Now believe me, the other half, we could do what we wanted to, but he says, I suggest you buy your own clothes.
9 years old, he's telling you to buy your own clothes.
Well, it was during the Depression, you know, it
Oh,
was
oh,
getting into bad times.
Right, right.
And I'm telling you, that money that I saved in that bank helped me buy my first home out on East North Avenue in 1949.
We were gonna cut to the next clip here. I want you to tell me about that home.